Pray for the nation Iran. I'm seeing a tension between Iran and Israel.
Prophet T.B. Joshua, the late Nigerian televangelist and founder of the Synagogue Church of All Nations, was a man both revered and controversial. While some viewed him as a spiritual leader with genuine prophetic gifts, others dismissed him as a charismatic preacher who thrived on theatrics and vague predictions. But whether you were a follower or a skeptic, there's no denying that many of T.B. Joshua's messages have echoed long after his death, especially those concerning global events. Among the most talked about in recent times is his chilling prophecy regarding a conflict between Iran and Israel. Years before tensions between the two nations escalated into direct military exchanges, T.B. Joshua spoke repeatedly about unrest in the Middle East. He didn't always mention names directly, but anyone who has followed his ministry closely will tell you he had a pattern of veiled warnings. He often spoke in parables, riddles, or spiritual metaphors that only made sense much later, after global events began to unfold. In one of his earlier sermons dating back to 2012, T.B. Joshua stated,
"It will be very serious than any other one you have ever witnessed. But we should not stop praying, because a break in prayer, what will start? Let us pray. This one will be different from others."
At the time, many didn't fully grasp the weight of what he meant. But over the past few years, his followers have been revisiting those words and piecing together what now feels eerily accurate. His concern for the Middle East wasn't limited to Israel or Iran. He would often ask the congregation and viewers across the globe to pray for Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, and Palestine. But when it came to Israel and Iran, his language grew more intense. In another sermon from 2015, which has resurfaced on social media amid current events, T.B. Joshua stated,
"It's close now, very, very close. I'm seeing an attack, I'm seeing fight between nation to nation. Pray for God's intervention. And God should settle every differences. Ask God for intervention."
At first glance, these words seemed too abstract. But with recent missile and drone attacks being exchanged between Iran and Israel, many of which are airstrikes that don't involve ground invasion, his phrasing of "fire that does not burn the ground" now hits differently. As the world watched the skies over Israel light up with missile defense systems intercepting Iranian projectiles, and as Iranian cities tightened security amidst fears of retaliation, the fear of full-scale war loomed heavily. T.B. Joshua's followers began flooding comment sections with clips of his old prophecies saying, "The man of God warned us about this, and he saw it coming." Videos on YouTube quoting his words started to trend, sparking debates not only among Christians but also in geopolitical circles, curious about whether prophecy and politics were beginning to overlap in a more visible way. But T.B. Joshua didn't stop at war predictions. In one of his most cryptic messages, he warned, "A great lion will roar in the desert, and a goat will answer with arrogance. This roar will shake not just the land, but also the waters and air, and those who sleep will be forced to wake." Many dismissed this as metaphorical poetry at the time. However, now some interpret the lion as Israel, a nation with a fierce military reputation, and the goat as Iran, known for its bold defiance in the region. The mention of shaking the waters and air, could that relate to the disruption of oil trade routes, missile warfare, and drone strikes affecting not just land, but airspace and the global economy? It's all speculation, of course, but for believers, this is not coincidence. What makes T.B. Joshua's prophetic messages stand out isn't just what he said, but how he said it. He was never quick to speak doom for entertainment or drama. Often he would pause mid-sermon, close his eyes, and say things like, "I'm seeing something," before uttering warnings that left audiences in silence. In the case of Iran and Israel, his tone was especially grave. He didn't celebrate conflict or frame it as a victory for one side over another. Instead, he emphasized that the spiritual consequences would be deep and generational. In a particularly somber address, he once said, "If this war happens, children will ask questions no one can answer. They will ask, why did we let it happen? Because what the eye will see will not be easy to forget." Another interesting angle is his repeated insistence that the world should pray for the youth of Iran. This, he said, was key to avoiding bloodshed. He described seeing a generation of Iranian youth rising with questions, anger, and fear. Young people caught between loyalty to their nation and the desire for a different kind of future. It's fascinating to note that in recent years, Iran has experienced waves of youth-led protests and dissatisfaction with its leadership. TB Joshua warned that if these emotions are not addressed with compassion and wisdom, they could be manipulated into hatred, fueling war rather than peace. And now, with Iranian youths increasingly vocal online and on the streets, the emotional and spiritual tension he spoke about seems to be mounting. Then there's Israel. TB Joshua's relationship with Israel was complex. He admired the nation, even visited, and his ministry welcomed many Jewish and Israeli visitors. But he also cautioned that Israel must not act out of pride. "Do not be proud because of your power," he warned in one sermon. "For it is written that those who exalt themselves will be humbled." He cautioned Israeli leaders that while they had military strength, the real strength lay in restraint and spiritual discernment. This message was not one-sided. He held both nations accountable, urging humility and warning that war would not leave either side victorious in the eyes of heaven. Now, as the world watches with bated breath, TB Joshua's call for global prayer feels more urgent than ever. He once said, "If the people of the world gather and pray, not out of politics, not out of profit, but out of love for peace, the hand of destruction will be turned back." In his view, prayer wasn't just a religious exercise, it was spiritual intervention. He believed that wars, though planned in the physical, were rooted in spiritual imbalances, bitterness, pride, revenge, greed. And unless those spiritual roots were dealt with, no ceasefire would ever bring true peace. What's also noteworthy is how TB Joshua predicted that the world powers, the US, Russia, China, and Europe, would pretend to help but come late. He was essentially warning that by the time the international community takes real action, the damage might already be done. And in today's reality, we see the global community often hesitating, issuing statements, holding meetings, but with very limited tangible results in preventing bloodshed. In his words, "The helpers are distracted and the hurting are forgotten." There's one quote, perhaps the most chilling of them all, that many are revisiting now. TB Joshua once said during a Sunday service, "You will soon hear of a cry in the desert, a cry not for water or food, but for peace. And the cry will go unanswered until the earth itself shakes." Was he speaking metaphorically, or was he foreseeing a regional quake, political or literal, that would force the world to pay attention? Whether one believes in prophecy or not, it's hard to deny the growing relevance of his words. The Iran-Israel conflict isn't just another war. It has the potential to spill over into neighboring countries, disrupt global oil markets, strain religious and political alliances, and awaken old grievances that have simmered for decades. TB Joshua seemed to sense this, not as a political analyst, but as someone tapping into what he called the spiritual atmosphere of nations, and he urged everyone, not just governments or leaders, to respond with prayer, understanding, and forgiveness. His death in 2021 came as a shock to many. But even after he passed, his voice seems to live on through his videos, his sermons, and the testimonies of those who believe he foresaw the future with remarkable clarity. For those who followed his ministry, the Iran-Israel tension is not just a news headline, it's the unfolding of a prophecy. It's a call to remember his warnings, not to glorify him, but to heed the spiritual signs he believed God had revealed. As missiles fly and diplomacy falters, TB Joshua's haunting plea echoes louder. Let love lead. Let peace reign. Do not be instruments of anger, but vessels of mercy. Whether you see him as a prophet, a preacher, or simply a man with insight, those words carry a weight that transcends religion or nationality. Perhaps, just perhaps, it's not too late to listen.